Hello, good folks. Welcome or welcome back if you're new here. I'm Nick. I've been a union rep for over 30 years. I do labor law and negotiations locally, regionally, and nationally. And I've also been a few years as a documents analyst in the European Parliament. Today, we learned that the defense closed in the Wisconsin versus Zachariah Anderson Anderson trial. So I thought I would do a mock defense closing in a way that I think would have effect on the jury. Now, this doesn't reflect what the defense actually will do, because it seems they have their theory all along has been pointing out the incompetence in the Kenosha Police Department in follow-up on leads that didn't point to Mr. Anderson. But first, ta-da! Got the dress for the occasion. Now, I will not bring up any props here for you to look at. Most of you have watched the trial, I hope, and knows what I believe is the lack of evidence. So when I refer to different events, testimonies, stuff like that, you will hopefully know what I am referring to. Okay. And I would start with the normal. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, thank you for your service. You are much appreciated for being here for longer than anticipated. Yeah, you know, stuff like that. And then I would go with the let me tell you a story closing. I would say, you have seen Mr. Anderson sitting here as the defendant in this trial, and now I will tell you, the jury, from what we believe the evidence shows is the point of view for Mr. Anderson. Mr. Anderson met with his former girlfriend in 2007. They had a relationship which resulted in their first child. And they had a relationship that resulted in their first child, a daughter. In 2012, they separated, lived apart at least, not really separated, because as Sadie testified to you, it was an on and off relationship. And this on and off relationship resulted in twin boys in 2012. So now they have 3 children together. And this continued to be on and off, as Ms. Beecham testified to, all the way up to 2020. And in early 2020, Mr. Anderson, according to the evidence that the state have produced to you, believed he still had an off and on again relationship with Miss Beecham. Until in February and March, something changed in this relationship. Miss Beecham met with Junior, the person missing who the state alleges was killed. During, as Miss Beecham testified to, they met online in February. They talked, and as it moved on, they met. Nothing new there. Still, nothing the state has provided you says that Mr. Anderson was aware of this. On the contrary, texts have shown to from Miss Beecham to Mr. Anderson things like, "Will you stay over?" XOXOXO, which you know means hugs and kisses. So in Mr. Anderson's eyes and mind, they are still having this on and off again relationship, as they have been doing since 2017 for 27, 18 years. Then he gets the message somehow that Miss Beecham is in Mexico during a time where she should have been with the children. Of course, as any responsible father, he wonders what is going on here. Why is Miss Beecham in Mexico, and where are my children? So he goes over to Miss Beecham's residence, discovers that she has left her kids at home with a friend. Maybe the timing of it can seem suspect at a glance, but you need to remember, this is Mr. Anderson's, he's the father, and he just discovered that the mother of his children has taken off to Mexico and left the kids with a friend. So yes, it was early in the morning. Yes, he got inside and made sure that the children were properly fed, made sure they came to school. And this apparently caused more friction, as it should. Because who, as a parent, does not get annoyed in that situation? And around this time is also when Mr. Anderson learns about Miss Beecham dating. So, of course, he assumes that Miss Beecham is in Mexico with the person she dates. Now we know, 2.5 years after the fact, we know, no, she was not there with the alleged victim. So what does Mr. Anderson do with this fact that the mother of his children is taking off without them, without telling him as a father? And you saw her testimony, she thought he didn't need to know. I would say that as a father, he should have had the right to know that his children was left with a friend. And then we come to what we only have testimony of from Miss Beecham and the daughter. Accusations of Mr. Anderson going over there, peeping through windows, leaving tracker devices, of which nothing has been found. No tracking devices, just the allegation. And you know from the daughter's testimony that it was impossible for her to have actually seen the placement of a supposed cell phone in an air vent, because they were parked at the other side of the building. And the daughter claims that Mr. Anderson told her later. But as you also know, the daughter also said that Mr. Anderson never wore Levi jeans, and due to testimony from police officers, you now know this is not correct. So there we have Mr. Anderson. He is upset about the mother of his children taking off to Mexico. So is it really that strange that Mr. Anderson wants to know who this person is that Miss Beecham is dating? So, as you have heard, he constructs a file about this other man because he wants to know who Miss Beecham is dating, so he can be assured that the person she's dating is safe for his kids to be around. Now that, in my opinion, is not unreasonable. Now we can have opinions on how and how much and the language he uses, but the baseline is he's worried about his children. So he takes steps to ensure himself that they are safe in that environment. And what he discovers, whatever he discovers, made him seek for custody over the children. And this is very important because of what happens next. Mr. Anderson is provable at his house. The state has provided no evidence that Mr. Anderson was at the location of Mr. Guiterres' apartment at the time they claim Mr. Anderson was killed. They claim Mr. Guiterres was killed. Nothing whatsoever. The only piece of evidence the state has is a smudge so small it couldn't be tested for both DNA and blood. You heard the state's two experts who disagreed with each other if the DNA showed it was Mr. Guiterres or didn't show. And if two experts disagrees, that is one element of reasonable doubt. The fact they can't place him at the site at the time they allege Mr. Guiterres was killed, that is another element of reasonable doubt. So now you have two elements. They cannot find anything on Mr. Anderson's property, on himself, in his car, in his work van, except that tiny smudge their experts disagrees on is Mr. Guiterres' DNA. You haven't been provided with a percentage of probability that it is Mr. Guiterres, only that it is, according to the first state expert, that it is a degree of certainty. not what degree of certainty. And still, the second expert disagreed that there can't be a degree of scientific certainty regarding that smudge DNA belonging to Mr. Guiterres. We suggest that this, as I said, creates reasonable doubts. So, Mr. Anderson is, according to GBS data, is at home, asleep. He stops texting, he goes to sleep, he goes up, he goes to work as a demolition. On his way to work, he stops by Walmart after searching which store is available for him. And he buys construction material for demolition. Garbage bags, sanitizing wipes, and stuff like that. Normal stuff, which the state tries to use against him. We have no evidence of that, because the state haven't provided anything else but a receipt that shows Mr. Anderson buying stuff for his work. He goes to the construction site, and you heard from the witness, the owner of that construction site, the owner of the house, on the stand under oath, saying she didn't see carpet in Mr. Anderson's work van. Now, the state has provided with the daughter's testimony, but again, as you have heard, the daughter's testimony, we know he wore Levi's jeans, and the daughter said he never wore Levi's jeans. So that's inconsistency. And as you heard from the statement we read to you, which both us and the state agreed, from the interviewing officer, that the daughter has changed her story significantly from the interviews to when she was on the stand. That, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, is the third object of reasonable doubt. So Mr. Anderson goes to the construction site and works. And then the state says there's a 3-hour gap, which they claim Mr. Anderson can't account for. But as you have been shown from the accountant, that Mr. Anderson drove to the accountant firm to get his tax forms. There are your 3 hours missing. So Mr. Anderson goes to bed on the 17th, gets out of bed on the 18th, goes to work, and on his way to work he collects construction stuff, normal things. He works, he goes to get his taxes, comes back to the construction site, nothing unusual. Works, goes back home. That is what the evidence shows. When he gets home, does what he normally does when he has collected debris from a demolition site. He starts a fire pit and burns it. And then on the 19th, something happens. 2 dudes show up at his place of residence. They go around to the back to confront Mr. Anderson, as they claim to have a discussion, because driving an hour out of the way, trespassing on private property speaks discussion. Of course, he doesn't tell him that he is the one they are looking for, and he uses his brother's name. Two intimidating persons, obviously aggravated, is looking for him. So he gives them a fake name, he goes inside, and he calls the cops. As any normal person would. Any normal person would. Unknown people are at my property. He waits for the cops, and they show up. And to his surprise, they arrest him for the murder or disappearance of Mr. Guiterres. That is the timeline. Nothing unusual in Mr. Anderson's behavior from the 17th to the 19th. The only unusual thing in this case, in this trial, is the lack of evidence from the state that he did anything other than his usual behavior. I urge you, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, to look at the evidence, the lack of evidence, how the Kenosha Police Department failed from day one to search for anything else than supposed evidence against Mr. Anderson. They did not check the landfill because they claim they didn't have enough personnel to check both the landfill and the work van. I say to you that the work van was already in place, secured. There was plenty of time to check the landfill. They could have chosen to check the landfill first and then check the work van. They chose not to, because all they have in their mind is to see Mr. Anderson as the suspect. They did not see, and they did so solely of the testimony of his ex-girlfriend. That was it. From the moment Miss Beecham said, "I believe it is my ex-boyfriend," they did not check any other leads. None. They didn't even check the woodlands properly, surrounding Mr. Guiterres' place of residence. They checked west with a drone and saw nothing. Nowhere else, except Mr. Anderson's property, Mr. Anderson's house, Mr. Anderson's burn pit, everything they checked was in order to find evidence against Mr. Anderson, nothing else. And no search of his property, none of the properties have yielded traces of Mr. Guiterres. The only thing is that smudge, which their own experts disagree on. That is the only thing that ties Mr. Anderson to Mr. Guiterres' disappearance. That is not enough. That is reasonable doubt. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen of the jury. We, on Mr. Anderson's behalf, will thank you for your service, and we hope and we believe that you will come back with a not guilty verdict. Thank you.